Dom Allen, welcome to Stories in AI. How is your Friday going?
Great to be here, Ganesh. Really excited to be on the Stories and AI show. And thank you for having me. My Friday is going really well. And even better now, I get to finish off my Friday speaking to you on this awesome podcast. So thank you for having me, sir.
So, we should have planned it better to actually be sitting here with a pint as we go through it, but we'll do it afterwards for sure on FaceTime. So thanks again for jumping on the show. Why don't we start with your personal journey, your story? Tell us your story.
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, really, my background, Ganesh, is from marketing. So that's where I really thrived. And funnily enough, I didn't think I'd actually go into marketing. I did a university course in it. And then I was at Capgemini subsidiary, where I kind of got my first look at AI and first look at emerging tech, which was really cool. And then I moved over to the PR world for account-based work. And I went to a marketing agency and found my feet. And that's where I went to eventually to a manufacturing business, and that's where I saw my first kind of looks of big automation solutions, being on the shop floor of big companies and seeing some big gantry robots fly around, and right down to the small FMCG good robots like Omron or someone like that, and really or Staubli, and seeing how they operate, and that really gave me the insight to how to market these kind of stories to people, and where we are today with AI Journal. So it's been very progressive, very not planned, I guess, and but very exciting at the same time. So a lot of new things, but it's been a good story so far.
That is awesome. And it's a great story, and I want to hear all about the AI Journal story. And what really fascinated me when we met, and I was, researching on AI Journal and the community that you've built in a very short span of time, reinforces one of the fundamental beliefs I have about AI. AI is all too much a very critical technology that, can completely and is already changing the face of mankind, right? All different industries, all different people, societies, businesses, governments, and entire gamut of things. But it is also what people don't often realize is, unlike other technologies, it's a very collaborative technology, right? Wherein you're bringing in people from different disciplines, you're bringing in different disciplines within it. For the first time in the world, you're getting software engineering, mathematicians and statisticians, and data science and subject matter expertise on different industries, all coming together to solve these amazing problems. And in a crude sort of way, you're trying to pass on a little bit of humanity into machines and algorithms, right? So it's a very collaborative technology, if you will. And community becomes a very important and critical pillar to making this happen. So I want to hear about the AI Journal story. Right? How did you come about? Why did you think there was a need for what problem did you see that needs to be solved? And what are your lessons from building that community?
Yeah, really appreciate it, Ganesh. So I look at it in the same kind of way as you, to your point as well. When I look at AI, I almost don't look at it as a technology. That's not to say it isn't one, but I look at it as a capability that allows people to do a lot more. So it's more than a technology in my eyes, because it plugs into anything, it goes to different versions, and it's a real, like you said, it spans across all different backgrounds, all different services, all different businesses. And I started noticing this, thinking, okay, and one of my friends was a data developer, and I'd occasionally hear them. And when I was at uni with him, he did advanced maths, and two of them did advanced maths, and I was in a housemate with both of them. So I kind of guess I saw I didn't realize it much at the time. I just thought, wow, I'll never understand that. But that's when I went into engineering. I really thought people need to learn about this. People need to know about this. And it really was from a selfish point of view that I wanted to teach myself, because I was in a landscape where I didn't understand what the technology was, or what our language was, or how machine vision works, or all these mainly more physical aspects work. And I really wanted to create a hub. So I went and bought the domain and just set it up, and kept it open source. And that way we've really had really kind contributors such as yourself, Ganesh, to come on board and share insights. And that's where we really have the passion. It always will be my passion, regardless of whatever else we do. It's to educate as many people as we can on AI and emerging tech by looking at it as an open source model. It's free to come and learn, to look and really break it down into simple terms that show you practical reasons for how technology, not just AI, cloud, IoT, sensors, data, whatever you want to look at, how these relate to the world, and how to look at the talent problems as well, or talent opportunities, I'd rather say, of how to get people trained up to whether you're in a software as a service business or understanding how you can view your data, all these topics that don't always get addressed, and maybe they did, but I didn't spot it anywhere. And that's really where we came up with it, to educate people. And that's where the passion will always be for me, Ganesh, to educate people on, to help people, to show frameworks that you can actually not just hear a buzzword, but you can actually understand, okay, this is how machine learning can help me understand something within a marketing department, or this is how I can understand why autonomous driving is going to be a big time saver, or whatever it is, all through small little snippets that we do to help people understand it. And by having it open source, we get the best of the best, and we get the people with the new ideas, and we get people from all ranges. We don't have it one-sided. So it's a real exciting journey, and it's been great to see how quickly we've grown. And that's down to two things: the user experience and user engagement, which is from contributors such as yourself, right through to the awesome people that decide to use our platform every day. So it's a lot more to come, but it's been a good first year. So it's been a very wild year as well. So yeah.
That's amazing, Tom. And there's a few things that you said that I just want to reemphasize and stress on for the audience, right? One is, there's no dearth of AI content in the internet. Like, you go anywhere, you find a lot of AI. But there is a huge gap. And this is why I started, Stories in AI, about 6 months ago, where there is a lot of propaganda from companies that talk about this is how you should do it. Right. And that's one kind of content. And there's a lot of content which was more about, deep technical content, which is like, hey, here is how you would do a gradient boost or an XGBoost algorithm to predict a risk score. I'm like, great. But then both of that actually satisfies a small group of the population who wants to get into this thing. Right. And I fundamentally think that AI is such a powerful technology, like we talked about, that can change the face of humanity, that you need more and more people to be part of that community, trying to build it, trying to be a part of it. And even if whether you're a marketer coming with no background in programming or statistics, whether you are a rickshaw driver in south of India, if you will, you should be able to contribute to the market, create some kind of economic value for the community and for yourself, but being part of it. And AI for the first time, and the internet and crypto and all of these technologies provide that landscape for you to do it, right? So I think, to your point, right, it is practical, sharing practical insights, what's happening, which is, I think we are very aligned on that vision. And that's why I was actually very honored when you invited me to be part of the advisory board for AI Journal, because I think the mission, we are very aligned on that mission. How do you spread? How do you educate people? How do you inspire people to be a part of this movement that is happening, right? It's once in a lifetime opportunity when the technology is maturing. And then on the other hand, you mentioned was like, it's about the open source nature, right? How do you keep it open? How do you keep it community driven? I've been an open source, proponent, like my background in software engineering and stuff too, right? And, there was this, I think the first book that really explored that concept was The Cathedral and the Bazaar. I mean, you should check it out if you haven't, which talks about how the cathedral way of actually thinking, which is like, it's basically calling out the old Roman Church, Catholic Church kind of a model, versus the bazaar model where things just happen. And, when communities form, the vendor one, there's gaps in the market that is automatically filled, and it's more dynamic, if you will. And that's the opportunity with open source and community. So fascinating work you're doing, for sure.
Appreciate it. And I'd say I 100% agree, because I can't remember when I saw the stats, and I wouldn't quote the stats, but I was looking at a comparison between when you look at software that's open source and you look at software that's closed. It's just amazing the progression of open source and how much you get new, better ideas. Like share, like it goes down to the simple word, sharing is caring, because the more you share, it's like proven time and time again, it's how you come up with better ideas. If you try and do everything by yourself, and being open source for a platform like you're doing and like we're doing, when people ask me how have you achieved quick growth, it's literally putting it down to, well, put 3 or 4 people in the same room, you're going to get some great ideas coming about of it if they're all on the same path. And I think it was people looking at Android compared to iOS. Which one do you prefer? Debatable, and there's pros and cons to each side. But the benefit that they had was, if you look at the amount that iOS, the amount of apps that they have compared to the amount of apps that Android have. Android are obviously open source, and Android were able to learn a lot quicker on what was working and what wasn't working. They were able to fix bugs a lot quicker. They were able to fix programs a lot quicker because they had just so much more input and so many more data points, which is why things like AI and machine learning are big things today. But I saw that and I was like, open source is clearly the way. Obviously, Apple are very savvy with their marketing and very smart, and arguably down to Steve Jobs. But looking at it from that kind of way, they were just moving at such a momentum, and it was all basically, from what I could see, through having it as open source and not being closed off and being a closed shop. And that really opened my eyes to think, wow, how progressive just open source is of anything, not just in the AI world, but if you're in any industry, for anyone listening, it's the way forward. Yeah. It gives you that network.
And it's so funny and so not funny, but like very insightful what you're actually calling out, because if you look at, I'm an iOS user through and through. That said, I totally get it, right? And there is like your trade-off experience for the variety and the choice and the freedom of things that you do in an open source fashion. The harder part, even though the Android versus iOS experience really showed everybody, was it's hard to manage a community, right? You can't, right? Community it's the bazaar. It happens when it happens and the way it happens. And how do you channel it? And the most I know this is not a discussion about open source, but one of the big debates that I always have with my friends and around who are like not so much into open source, they're like, look, nobody has ever made money in open source, is the classic, entrepreneurial pushback that I get. And I just asked them to look at crypto, right? Look at Bitcoin, the biggest open source code. You can download it into a floppy drive, if you will, the entire Bitcoin code, right? And it's just created so much economic value for everybody, and that's the power of open source in general. And I know it's not just open source, it's the internet and stuff like that, right? So, but anyway, fascinating.
Yeah, I was just going to say, if you look at that though, Ganesh, with anything from, if you look at an RPA company, like they say, it's why UiPath did so well, because they had the developer program and they kept it very largely open, and they made it a community-driven business essentially, and that's what did lead them, in my views, to being the leader in RPA at the moment, or the one that's gone public at least. And you look at it from something like GitHub. I'd love to know the stat, Ganesh, how many people have founded businesses of each other that they found through GitHub and through code that they've used, and what businesses have come out of that. And I'd love to know from Reddit as well. Look at Reddit. Everyone uses it. It's open source. It's just everyone's welcome, and it's where you get the ideas. It's where you get the... Yeah, I could bang on to you why open source is a way forward, but I'm glad we're on the same page.
No, that's awesome. That is awesome. No, and what an impressive piece of work you've done, and you continue to do, growing this community with AI Journal. So talk about AI. What have you seen in the industry, and with all your conversations, the research you do, and some of the reports you published as well. So what are the big themes you see in the world of AI today?
Yeah, it's a great question. There's a lot going on, and I think definitely off the back of the pandemic, how much AI is being used in healthcare and what it can be used to do in those areas, how effective it was. I've read various different reports and different insights to how effective it was, or to how well the models were trained, because obviously COVID hit us and everyone's predictions went out the window, because that's why I'm not a massive fan of predictions, because something like COVID comes along and it just scrobbles everything. So it was really interesting to see how AI and machine learning and how quickly people were, especially data teams, adapting to try and make use of this data. And I know someone over in Australia, they were mapping a lot of the data across all of Australia to understand hospitalizations, to understand where the entry points were, everything just how quickly. So it's been amazing to see in that area. Another area is AI for the global warming situation. So if someone really wants to, or any of your audience watching, as an Explained episode, so Explained, quick side note, it's one of my personal favorite series. I love it. And I love how quick they're short, they're bite size. And there's one on tornadoes, and it doesn't touch really on the topic of AI and ML, but it touches on a higher level view of how to be able to predict those. And that's going to be huge, because there's amazing companies out there like NVIDIA that are doing amazing work to try and stop or to try and lower energy, to stop outages like what happened in Texas, to do all these things through learning that data, feeding it back, and making sure that these things don't happen. Like no one has to go without energy, or people can get evacuated before a storm hits, or whatever it is. those models are running thousands of simulations. And I'd say off the back of that, another big thing is, you could call it metaverse. I'd say metaverse is one on its own, but also digital twins. So digital twins, maybe not all AI, but the idea that you can model something and just run simulation after simulation after simulation after simulation that is so valuable and so important to be able to see. And I think it was it the names escape me? Unity came out, and great team there. They came out saying they're going to try and map the whole world essentially and run simulations, which is just, that's obviously going to use so much data, so much AI to try and map. Can you imagine how many things happen on a day-to-day basis? What's happening up the road from you right now? What's happening 10 minutes from me? All these different situations, they're trying to map that into a digital twin. It's incredible. But if you can be able to map those kind of situations, it's especially with things like aviation or areas like that, it's brilliant. The metaverse, I see that becoming an area that's going to be huge. I always said it'd be the next business that I'd be going into, trying to create an application for the metaverse, because I see it being bigger than e-commerce. I really do. I see it being the next way we're going to shop, buy, and the next way we're going to do meetings, the next way we're going to run checks. And it's like Gary Vee said, the blockchain is where people are going to get married, let alone where people are going to go and buy
your marriage registration. Registry on. No, it is. It's a fascinating. We live in some amazing times, and to your point, right? Few call outs. One, definitely, it's people who are in the machine learning, data, or AI community often try to think of or measure progress from a perspective of, have the transformer models solved this problem, or AlphaGo has done this versus AlphaFold is doing genome sequencing. But the reality is, if you take a step back and look at the impact AI is driving, the examples you gave, right? Being able to evacuate people, being able to help people in distress, being, driving more financial inclusion by using AI to power a lot of these things. And to your point, it's not just AI. I think what's most fascinating at this time in human history is the confluence of all these different technologies coming together. And I'm pretty sure there's a chart out there. But if you actually draw a chart of how the innovation and how the pace of innovation and how it's actually made an impact, we'll probably be looking at an exponential curve right now, right? Because it's not just one. It's like the fact that, hey, I can have a distributed, non-custodial database like the blockchain maintain, data for everybody. But then I can apply AI on it to actually do intelligence on who's accessing it, what's the relevance, how do you predict something, and then bringing the two together. To your point on metaverse, I think fascinating. I'm super excited about this too. And obviously there's different camps of this thing, right? But some people you could say that, hey, the metaverse is just another way to market virtual reality and extended reality and mixed reality, if you will. And maybe that's true because those are building blocks that are actually being built. And what the metaverse concept and trying to make it a thing, and Harish Lodlikar, who's the CEO of Superworld, he was on my show last week. He talks about it. And I asked him, like, what is the metaverse, Harish? And he said, it's just the next evolution of the internet, right? It's just the way that you're just going to spend more time online than offline. And then how do you bring and take all the things that you love offline into the online world? And, obviously you get to re-engineer a lot of things that you didn't like offline that you don't want that online, right? So things like that. So I think it provides a fascinating opportunity. And we live in just such amazing times. So thank you.
No, there's a lot of cool technologies coming, and I always think it's the adoption as well that people, they want to jump to. Think it will take a long time to adopt it, but it will be here. Like the mobile phone, God knows how much we spent. What would we do without mobile phones today? It would be, but when they first came out, or I remember when Instagram first came out, you're thinking, oh, I don't know, we're going to use this. Now people are like, TikTok had more searches than Google. Like that just proves how much a market can pick up. And I think when people say, "Oh, I'm not going to use Google Glasses or smart glasses or whatever version you're going to use," I think you probably will. Like it's just because it will just become normal. It will become easier, and it will become well, everyone else is doing it. I can just see it coming that way. As much as people say, "I'll never wear them," I'm just like, "Oh, okay, we'll see about that in 10 years." Because this is a mobile phone is a digital arm of yourself, if you may. It's it's
Yeah.
you. It's embodying you. Like you give your phone to
Extension.
someone else, you panic. You think, don't take my phone, because it's part of you, because it's got your data, it's got your identity, it's got your persona all locked in those files, and it will be the same with glasses, and it will just remove the need to. It's going to be very awesome, but also Ganesh, just to the point, and to look at it also from a commercial point of view, what's going to change with AI. One of the big things I say, or one of the areas we look at, is what the difference is, to take it to a commercial route, what the difference is between license-based and usage-based when you're looking at software as service models, and when you're looking at vendors or things, how much that's going to change, because businesses are using AI, cloud, IoT, they need more secure data, big manufacturing plants taking everything to the edge, so it's all secure within their own remit. And all of this, I think, it makes me quite, I guess you could call it the low code, no code debate, but how that will
Yeah.
change for everyone as well. So not just from a personal view, but does UiPath keep doing number of licenses compared to how much a usage of a business? And I think those are going to be bigger changes and massive changes, similar to what AWS did with how they got their whole program up and running. So it's not just with the technology; it's with how we implement it as well. We're in a
Yeah.
very exciting time. Very lucky to be born at this time, because it blows
No,
my mind.
that's amazing. You know, it's interesting how one of the things you said around this whole no code, low code kind of an environment. And it's fascinating to think about, like we talked about AI being such a community driven, collaborative science, if you will, right, to go do. What that
Yeah,
has to then align, why is it really hard to implement AI, is because there's all these separation of concerns that are not separated, right? You have the
yeah,
data science guys who are actually trying to solve problems. You have the data engineering trying to make sure the data is clean, up to date, things like that. There's a user designer who's trying to map the experience for the user. There's a software developer or a DevOps engineer trying to productionize this and put it in production. And all of them really worry about different things. So there is no separation of concerns. What no code, low code platforms allow you to is build these layers of abstraction that can then go and be separate those concerns, so everybody can collaborate more easily, better, and make a difference with AI. So now, great to call out that particular movement that is happening in the AI world as well. Um, one other question is COVID-19. You guys did a research, and I know AI Journal has a research arm, so you do a lot of first-party research and uh, um, uh, managed research for organizations and institutions as well. And
yeah,
you did some work on the post-COVID future of work, right? Can
yeah.
you share some insights from that report and that the research that you did?
Yeah, of course. So it was quite some time ago now, but that got a lot of traction with a lot of publications, and it was great to see what people were thinking. So we ran a survey, and it's something we try and do as an investment to really help understand where people are and what people are doing. And it really showed to us, we wanted to interview people of all scopes. So I remember when we were going around interviewing, it was going to people that said, I don't know anything around AI. I was like, that's great, because we want to understand what you do and don't know, because we're not going to know until we know what you know. That's why it's important, because a lot of these, and I wouldn't generalize it, but a lot of companies that are involved with tech, they sometimes get lost in themselves, Ganesh, about looking at just the tech, not actually thinking we've got to sell to people that aren't going to understand what this data model actually does. They just want to know that it's going to save them time or get them home earlier or save them money, that they can report that cost. And so we looked at it from that way, just to show how optimistic people actually are and how many people are actually going to be implementing it. And it really surprised us, because when we originally did the research, we didn't think, know how people were going to respond. And that's why it really led us to want to know more, and why we now offer it as a service, to say, okay, well, what do people want to know about this, and what do people think AI is going to do? And it was just really, really helpful to understand that, because it wasn't as bad as what we thought. And really, I always say, and it's like anything in life, right? What you don't know, you're generally quite scared of. So if you don't know much about it, you're going to probably be a little bit, depending on the situation, or you're not going to be comfortable answering an answer on it or answering a question on it, because you don't know anything about it. And it was really trying to debunk that, just to try and look at, okay, well, what can executives do? What can team leaders do? And what can we do as a community to help you understand this more than anything? What can we build into this to help you understand? And that has kind of framed the kind of topics that we get talked about on our platform and all those different ways, but also to help people understand that the next time they hear the word artificial intelligence, they don't come up with the classic line of, oh, isn't AI going to take my job? Because it's not. It's there to help. And it was a great piece of research. So one that we'll have to do again, because that was looking I thought we were coming out of COVID at that time when we ran it, but we're still obviously still in it over here to a degree. Just looking at what would have changed now if we can look at those advancements, how comfortable people feel, because a lot of the digital transformation projects that happen very quickly, moving people, big companies, moving everyone remote, moving everyone with their own laptops, moving everyone with servers so they can have access to their data and on Slack and onto a OneDrive or a secure data, whatever it was. That project, it would have changed a lot of things since we last ran that report. So it was really interesting to see, and obviously uses a lot of AI, which is what makes me laugh, because people say I hate AI, and I go, do you own an iPhone? They go, yes. So I go, well, you've got AI in your pocket then. So it's just like, it makes me giggle, but it's it was a very good report to do.
Fascinating. No, thanks for sharing that. I think no, definitely COVID was the much needed boost for digital transformation globally.
Yeah.
Satya Nadella said it, right? I mean, I think it was Q1 of Q2 of last year, or last year's address. He said, like mid 2020, he mentioned this. Hey, in the last 3 months, we've seen 3 decades of digital transformation that already happened, right? So it's fascinating. It's pretty fascinating how a little tiny wires that, the entire viral load in the universe will fit in under 700 grams or something like that, or 72 kg, something like it's just incredible how something as tiny, something as small, just upended the whole world to move so fast. Also, is a story of human resilience and how we actually thrive at an adversity like this, right? So pretty fascinating. All right, I got some fun questions for you. 2022, we're just beginning, we're kicking it off, right? What are your big predictions for 2022? In tech, in AI, in life, in general? No topics barred.
That's cool. So one of my predictions is that people are actually going to not like going back to work as much, because they'll realize how much they had it when they were at home, which I think will be a big pushing point. And I actually think another prediction of what the technology that will be coming out, I don't reckon everyone's big on the metaverse. And I think it's a bit like I was literally talking about it earlier on another show, where looking at how the internet was taking ages to be adopted, and now obviously we use it in day-to-day life. I reckon it will be the same. I don't reckon this is the year for metaverse, and I don't reckon this is the year for wearables, but I reckon it is a big year for making sure people are aware of it. So I don't know where I would stand in what. Not much can actually be done in a year's time when you think about it, because it's always the classic saying, people overestimate what they can do in a year, they underestimate what they can do in 10 years. But I would look at it from what we can be like. Obviously, digital transformation has been a big push for the past 2 years since 2020. And I think a big prediction I'll have is how we now stick to working much more remotely, but also kind of understanding that area of where we're going. So it's going to be a good one. I don't know around what sort of technology is going to come out. I mean, we're trying to go to a lot of different shows this year and what's going to be coming out and what cool tech we'll see. But a lot of it isn't necessarily new. It's just market adoption. So it'll be very cool. From my side, from a prediction point of view, I've obviously got my own kind of views on where I want to take the AI journal over the next 12 months, which will be very exciting, and what we'll do there on how we're reaching people. But also just generally how the world is going to work. I think it's going to be really interesting to watch. I mean, I'm kind of jading away from the question a little bit, because people who know me know I don't like making predictions, but I also like the idea of what could happen and what can happen. So I think it will be a very exciting year, and I think there's going to be a lot of things where I think a lot of people are anticipating a lot to happen, and I don't reckon, I'm not a negative person, but I don't reckon it's going to happen as quickly as people want. And I don't think things are going to happen that metaverse is all of a sudden going to take over. And I reckon we'll go through this massive peak. It will slow back down, but then 5 years we'll be having this conversation and it's 10 times higher. Like, I reckon it will be a slow thing, but I reckon by the end of this year, I hope I had my first pair of virtual glasses and first pair of my first experience of being in the metaverse. And I reckon this will be the year for it, but I don't reckon it'll be the year that we adopt it. I reckon it'll be a year of a lot, and I reckon a lot. This year will be a big year for things like global climate change. And I know that's whether you're an advocate for it or not, I don't know. Me, I just look at it as it's going to impact a lot of the way that we do business, a lot of the way that things happen, a lot of predictions on not tech related, but a lot of predictions on all sorts of consumer trends, which obviously AI and machine learning will be used on the back end to understand how many people are turning to becoming vegan, or all these different trends. So there's a lot of, I reckon it's going to be a very good year for actually realizing that we need to change a fair bit before the pandemic, before we were going a bit too crazy. So it'll be a good year.
That is awesome. That is so awesome. And I hope by the end of the year, I get AR glasses that look more like this than the than the
Well, they
clunky
already
one
exist
that
actually.
I
Yeah. They're going to be
wear.
around, aren't they? The Facebook ones. Mark Zuckerberg trialed them, and he showed they're in unison with Ray-Ban. Is it? Yeah, I'm sure it's Ray-Ban.
Ray-Ban, yeah.
Yeah.
But you know that today it's just a camera, right? I mean, it just all it has is a camera. I did some work with I think I can talk about it now because it's launched with Bose about 5 years ago, and
Yeah.
they actually did this augmented audio, right? Which is like they have the sunglasses, which has got speakers in it, and it's fascinating. It was launched or kind of beta tested during a South by Southwest here in Austin. And what they
Yeah.
did was actually, and we partnered with them to see whether we can apply AI location intelligence and use it in
Yeah.
places like theme parks. You're walking by, you're listening to music, and you're waiting for a ride on that big giant wheel somewhere, and you get a message saying, "Hey, there's only a 5 minute wait there. You can just walk up to it." Imagine doing that in other spaces, stadiums, and places like that. And it's a
Yeah.
fascinating piece of technology what Bose did because the audio was so crystal clear. It had the Bose quality, and the person
Yeah.
standing right next to you can't hear it. It's just you, and there's nothing that goes into your ears. It's just fascinating, mind blowing, right? They're selling those glasses. I forget what it's called, but the idea was actually then add cameras to it, to the glasses and stuff. I think one of the challenges we had 5 years ago was the how do you pack so much power in a small form factor? Now those
Yeah.
problems are getting solved. Battery sizes are shrinking. Being able to compute power. Like I remember when I first wanted to get deep into VR, virtual realities, 2015, 2016, I had to carry a backpack or
Yeah.
have a computer, that's connected to my Oculus Rift or HTC Vive, so that I can power the damn thing. Right today, Oculus 2, you don't need anything; you just walk around with that. Right, it's
Yeah.
fascinating. I think. But to your predictions, I'm really hopeful. You're right. I think. And one point on your note on your notion of predictions, right? I look at predictions as not a way to predict the future, but more like putting some accountability into the bets you're making, right? And so I
Yeah.
just published at AI Journal my
Yeah.
2022 predictions, or like what to expect in big tech in 2022. And I call on a
Yeah.
lot of those things that you're talking about. But your larger theme that you mentioned, which is definitely things are going to happen a lot slower than people think it is going to. So don't, if you have FOMO right now about getting into all these spaces, it's not late, right? Just get in, but be prepared for a long, arduous journey and learn as you go, right? That's
Yeah.
important. That's critical. So I think I share that sentiment of yours, and
Yeah. I
fascinating.
think
No,
so.
that's great.
Yeah.
Um, that is awesome. So I got a couple more rapid fire questions for you, and then we can wrap up, right? Do you
Yeah. Please.
believe Yeah, do you believe in artificial general intelligence? Is that going to happen in our lifetime? Do you fear it? What are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I reckon it will happen. It was I forgot his name. I saw the podcast. Is it near someone? And I watched that. He said it's not going to be around for about another 100 years, and I'll put it in the links after. And looking at what it is and what's capable, I don't know if it's capable or not, but I wouldn't be surprised if it is. I mean, the rate that, and it's quite ironic because I say we move slowly. We have these explosive moments where if it's a trend and everyone gets on behind that trend, like Elon Musk started with electric cars. It wasn't within the first year that electric cars came on, but now look at it. Now
Sure.
it's a trend and everyone's behind it. Look how quickly it's moving. And I think it's the same with what I was saying to Metaverse. By 10 years, I reckon it will be huge, but it will be the same with AGI. I reckon AGI will be possible because and I reckon, call me crazy, but I reckon space travel and hyperspeed will be possible if we can make those right
It's
jumps.
already
Because
possible, right?
you look at something like AGI, and people say, "Oh, it's not possible." How do you know that? All it takes is someone to stumble across a piece of code or to stumble across something. Look at Henry Ford, the classic annotation. He said, if anyone looked around and asked people what do they want, if he had gone to ask people what do they want, they'd have turned around and said faster horses. So he turned around and created a car. What's that done for the world today? It's arguably the single biggest innovation that's allowed us to achieve everything. And it's what spurred movement towards plane travel, to all different technology travel, to all things. And I think it'll be the same with AGI or something. That once you know AGI, who knows what space travel will do, because you'll essentially have a human. But yeah, I reckon it will be very possible, and I reckon it's not to be scared, because it's I mean, all AI is derivative, right? So everything that it gets stemmed from will be from ourselves. It'll be like a general population almost. We have criminals out in the world, like we can't stop that, and there'll be influences, I'm sure, but I reckon the large majority won't be. So that's why I say I'm not scared. There might be the occasional accidents and casualties like there are anywhere else in the world, and like there are with humans, but I do reckon it will be heavily stemmed from what we think. I don't think it'll be this Terminator or iRobot wave of all surpassing to one greater good or something. I reckon it will be a lot. I reckon it will be very, very safe and very, very helpful as well. So yeah, I reckon it's a trend that's going to appear in our lifetime. I don't know when, but in our lifetime.
No, that is awesome. I think one thing that people don't really give credit to is humans do bad things all over. Like, and while they do all the good things, obviously the good things are more than the bad things. Like, you're criminals, you're robbers, you're thieves, you're murderers, all those things. But there's a big difference between a machine or an algorithm or an intelligent system doing that, because humans want to do bad things, or there's a want or the desire to do something bad or good, right?
Yeah,
Machines or algorithms have no desire. They're an optimization thing. So I fear not the algorithm or the machine that's going to kill humans. I worry more
yeah,
about the bad humans who get access to this powerful technology that they can
yeah.
actually do bad things with, right? So but it's a fascinating world we live in. One last question for you, Tom. um, Personal practice, anything that you do on a daily basis that helps you go a million miles an hour and do these things? A very personal question. You can decline to answer
Oh,
too.
yeah, no, I love it. I take cold showers, something my friend was asking me about yesterday. So I do that every day to try and if it's late at night, obviously I have a hot shower if I'm going to bed or whatever. But normally cold showers every morning. They get me going, get me pumped. And normally I try and do a lot of movement. So at the moment I'm doing a challenge for a charity. So I've done nearly 600 miles, hoping to get to 750 miles because I've taken a few breaks, but just to always keep myself active. And I remember I learned it when I was at a Tony Robbins seminar, to just keep yourself movement creates focus, and when you're moving you get better ideas. And when I mean, I look at it like a very successful people, they're not athletes, but they're always moving, they're always walking, they're always keeping active, and it is keeping your head moving, because once you're active and once you've got fitness going, you feel better, and you don't need to become a fitness freak. Like, I'm no athlete, but that's what I do every day to try and get movement, try and get energy. And when you've got energy and when you've got passion, it makes things a lot easier to go into. It makes a challenge a lot easier to go to, and it makes hearing the word no from someone you want to have as a client, or something you're trying to set up, or so, it makes it a lot easier to think, okay, to not look at it as a problem, but to look at it as a solution. So those are the two things: always movement, always cold showers, and always gratitude as well, because it could be a lot worse even on the worst days. So
That is,
those are the
that
three
is
things I
awesome.
always try and focus on.
That is awesome. Gratitude, cold showers, and movement. I love it. On the note on cold showers, I read this book, "What Doesn't Kill You." "What Doesn't Kill Us" by it was actually Scott Carney, but it's basically the Wim Hof story, right? The
I say, is
Iceman
that
Wim
Wim
Hof
Hof?
story,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
So
great guy.
I read this, I want to say about 5 years ago, and I'm a huge cold shower fan too. I do cold showers too every day. And if you haven't checked this book out, it's fascinating. It just changed my life back in the 5 years ago when I first read it. So it's cold
Yeah,
showers, visual meditation, so visualization, and
yeah,
breath control to a lot of things. And I do a lot of yoga myself too. So no, it's
yeah,
fascinating. I love the trifecta: movement, cold showers, and gratitude. And with
yeah.
that, I think that's amazing advice for everybody watching the show. Um,
Yeah, I appreciate
Tom,
that.
this was fascinating. Thanks so much for jumping on. It was a blast.
Yeah, love it, Ganesh. Really appreciate you having me on, and hope the audience find value from it. Been good.
Yeah, no, one last question. Sorry. How can the viewers and listeners get in touch with you? Where can they find you on the internet?
Yeah, so if you type in AI Journal, you can find a website. Should be top of the list. If you type in AI Journal into LinkedIn, you can join the community and follow up with us. You can connect with me, Tom Allen, on LinkedIn, which is where I'm hanging out quite a bit at the time. And on our LinkedIn, you always see that we're publishing the link to our Slack channel that we're trying to build, our newsletter, so you can join them to get free updates. For our newsletter, we have multiple event partnerships. I think we're touching 65 at the moment, and we're always giving away loads of cool freebies, free tickets, reduced sponsorship, notes that you don't get elsewhere, exclusive discounts. So I would recommend joining that, and that gets pushed to our LinkedIn. So if you're not on LinkedIn, come and join us on there, because it's where we have a lot of fun, and we would do a lot of LinkedIn lives, and where you can come and reach out to me personally. We'd love to help and see what we can do together.
Awesome. Onwards. Thank you so much, Tom. Happy 2022. And where you and I and AI will change the world for sure.
Looking forward to it.